everyone, it's me, and today, Tiger King! Meow! I'm sorry. Alright, this video came out in the year 2020, back in the start of the global pandemic period.
President MatPat, the American public is growing restless. We need a plan to keep everyone quarantined in their living rooms.
Hello, Netflix. The country needs you. Do it now.
You're not serious, right?
Not serious? I am as serious as an anime fan complaining about a new season of shows. Now, are you gonna do as I say, or are you just gonna sit there and keep letting innocent people die?
No, sir. I mean, yes, sir. I mean, I'll do it right now.
The button for Tiger King.
They're rushing to their homes! You've saved us all, President MatPat!
Good job!
Was it the final season of Stranger Things?
Oh,
A
no,
new
no.
season of Nailed It?
No, none of that. Desperate
Great
times
job.
call for desperate measures, my friend. So we had to pull out the big guns. We had to release the king.
The King?
The Tiger King!
Game Theory.
Hey, all you cool cats and kittens.
Hey.
Welcome to Film Theory, the perfect show for all your quarantine binging needs. Speaking of binging, can we just all stop and talk about Netflix's new 7-part docuseries Tiger King for a moment? Now, if you haven't seen it yet, you should. Or at least the first few parts of this thing. Add it to your to-watch list after rewatching The Office seasons 1 through 5 for the umpteenth time. Let me explain Tiger King to you this way. Imagine the craziest movie plot you could possibly think of with like the most over-the-top characters, and then throw what you just imagined away because Tiger King is even more extreme. Basically, the show begins as a glimpse into the quirky subculture of private citizens who raise tigers, but then quickly spirals out of control into a world of polygamy, cults who wear animal print, drug smuggling, attempted murders, actual murders, presidential campaigns, meat trucks, tigers in suitcases, and bad country music. Lots and lots of bad country music.
This is my first album. I saw Tiger, and this is my
That's a
second album,
lot.
Starstruck. There's 28 songs and 16 music videos.
But it's
Have you
not
watched
just the
Tiger King?
twists and turns in the story. Tiger King is also just a non-stop parade of impossible characters who somehow exist in real life. You would never assume there was one person in the world like this, and yet Tiger King introduces us to several dozen of them, and they are like the worst people ever. Don't get me wrong, there are some gems in there, but most of them are just awful, awful human beings. When one of the most relatable of the group is a former drug kingpin who casually speaks about watching his henchmen hack up an FBI informant with a machete, you know that you're in that part of YouTube again. Except, this is in Netflix territory.
What am I going to tell the feds now, or the judge? Your Honor, I did not shoot him. I did not use the circular saw in his neck. It was somebody else. What difference does it make? I'm still there.
There's people like Doc Antle, a ponytailed quote-unquote doctor, tiger breeder, and possible polygamist cult leader. There's Jeff Lowe, the exotic cat owner slash breeder slash felon whose net worth is probably anywhere between $10 million and negative $10 million. Oh, and it's just worth noting that he's an all-around creepy dude who is definitely not gonna hit on his family's new nanny.
You ready?
I'm ready for the nanny. I said you can get a nanny as long as I get to pick her. If you're gonna bring in one, why bring in one that's not enjoyable to look at?
And the list goes on. The sheer volume of missing limbs and missing teeth in this docuseries is staggering.
A lot of people think tigers took my legs. No, it actually happened from a zipline accident.
And yet, even when you surround yourselves on all sides
Is
by the
that
most
elephant?
insane characters you can possibly imagine, two outshine them all. I'm talking, of course, about Joe Exotic.
He's a completely insane, gay, gun-toting, drug addict fanatic.
He wasn't real. He was like a mythical character living out in the middle of Oklahoma.
And his bitter rival to the death, animal rights activist Carol Baskin.
Hey, all you cool cats and kittens. It's Carol at Big Cat Rescue.
One of the many,
Oh, got a green screen.
many stories that the docuseries covers is the ongoing feud between these two, where Carol is trying to get Joe's zoo shut down for the mistreatment of tigers.
You're an animal rights person, and you try and come into this facility, this is what you're going to be greeted with.
Joe Exotic hates Carol and everything she stands for so much that he hired a hitman to kill her, failed, and is now serving a 22-year prison sentence as a result. Meanwhile, Carol is walking free, which should be a victory, right? I mean, she's the one fighting on behalf of the animals. But it's a bit more complicated than that. Sure, at a glance, mild-mannered Carol Baskin probably doesn't strike you as being evil, devious, or even unpleasant. The woman's wardrobe is exclusively cat prints, she vlogs from her bicycle, she's dedicated her entire life to ending animal cruelty. But what infuriates people like Joe Exotic is her apparent hypocrisy. She fights against putting big cats in cages, and yet there are cat-filled cages all around Big Cat Rescue, the organization that Carol essentially inherited after her husband's mysterious disappearance. Big Cat Rescue fights against people like Joe breeding tigers and exploiting the animals for profit, and yet we see footage throughout the docuseries of her allowing paying customers to get up close and personal with their cats.
Guests tour the sanctuary, take tons of pictures, and even help feed the cats.
If you're taking photos and stuff, it'd be great if you would use the hashtag Big Cat Rescue.
It's so funny because the very people that are against breeding used to do the same thing.
So Carol is trying to put a stop to the most lucrative aspects of big cat ownership while also allegedly doing similar things herself. That's gonna make a couple people mad. Oh yeah, and she also may have killed her husband and fed his dead body to the tigers.
The whole world's wondering, would you actually grind your husband up, feed him to the tigers so there's no evidence?
You see, Carol inherited the Big Cat Rescue when her husband, Don Lewis, just up and disappeared one day, never to be heard from again. And Carol was the one to profit, which has caused her detractors, people like Joe Exotic, to concoct some absolutely insane theories about her killing him and then feeding the body to the hungry tigers, leaving no scrap of evidence or no scrap of Don behind. It seems crazy, right? You want to feel bad for her, except the more she talks, well, let's just say that she's not doing herself any favors.
If I were gonna, if somebody wanted to kill you, then they would put like sardine oil all over you. Something that the cat wants to eat, not something the cat wants to drool on.
Wow, that was oddly specific there, Carol.
Yeah, don't do that, man. It's character assassinations on yourself. Why?
To run his hands through the tiger, much less a body.
Carol, you might want to stop talking.
I think that these people are smart enough to only use their very closest circle of people that they've got good dirt on to dispose of a body, unless you part them out right there, I guess.
You know what? I'm just gonna stop you right there.
Alright, I'm gonna start this video for a moment first. Case in point, please don't do that. Let's be understanding, polite, and just respectful for one another. Thank you so much. Let's keep this positive, family friendly, and yeah. Continue the video. Thank you.
Suffice it to say, to this day, the case of Don's disappearance remains open. Carol has not done the best job of clearing suspicion around her, and investigators are hopeful that the success of Tiger King the docuseries will bring about more information. So I'm here to do exactly that. Not solve the case by any means, definitely not. But I'm here to provide a little bit more information, scientific information. Is it possible for Joe's theory, Joe's tiger theory, to be right? Could Don have actually been fed to the figurative wolves by being fed to the literal tigers? If I were a Tiger King looking to dispose a body of my own, would my zoo full of exotic creatures be a valid option? This is unquestionably one of the most insane theories that we've ever looked into at over 220 episodes of this series. I just think it goes to prove the point that truth really is stranger than fiction. So here are the facts that we have to work with. On August 18th, 1997, big cat breeder and multimillionaire Don Lewis was seen for the last time near Tampa, Florida. Insert Florida joke here. According to the docuseries, he'd been having arguments with his young wife Carol and had even gone so far as to seek a restraining order from her 2 months before his disappearance.
Daddy never really involved the law in anything. For him to go down there and write that out and present it before a judge was major.
In the court filing, Don claimed that Carol had threatened to kill him on more than one occasion, and that she had 2 guns available to her. According to some of his friends, around this time, Don was also angling to divorce Carol.
If Don Lewis had gotten a divorce with Carol, the way Don would have worked, she would have been left with really nothing.
Many who knew Don agree that he wasn't exactly a one-woman kind of guy, and the fact that he was making frequent trips to Costa Rica was apparently a huge source of friction between him and Carol, who had good reason to believe that Don had a girlfriend down there. In fact, Don was planning to leave for Costa Rica right around the time that he went missing.
Don started to tell me something. He said, "Kenny, if I can pull this off, it will be the slickest thing I ever did in my life."
Alright, case in point, let's be understanding that this sort of things may or may not, it's inevitable that at some point in time, this sort of things will happen. Alright, the spouse or your partner just want to have like 1 week, 1 month, 1 year of just relax, of just being away. Like, case in point, let's be honest with you. If you have like a 20 years marriage, and out of this 20 years marriage, 2 years out of it was horrible, that means 18 years is good. So think about it. It's like 90% of this entire marriage was positive. That's great, isn't it? Don't even say like 90%. 80% of this marriage is positive. That's great. That is just great news to have, isn't it? Yeah. So let's be understanding, let's be polite, let's be respectful about each other's decisions, let's be open about it. At some point in time, cheating will occur. The thought of cheating will occur definitely. And I know that jealousy, envy will really kicks in. But, well, we are all humans, isn't it? Let's be respectful towards one another. Talk it out. Thank you.
August 19th, the day after Don's disappearance, Carol reported him missing. Shortly thereafter, Don's van was found abandoned at a tiny airport nearby.
Do you think it was planted? I think someone else drove the van there. I don't know if it was planted there.
Does this mean that Don Lewis flew a plane down to Costa Rica and intentionally disappeared himself? Maybe, but it doesn't seem likely, at least according to Don's lawyer, Joe Fritz.
It's impossible with the size and types of planes that Don had that I know of, that he could nonstop go from here to Costa Rica.
Besides, Don's longtime personal assistant, Ann McQueen, claims that when he was flying down to Costa Rica,
he flew commercial out of Miami.
In the wake of his disappearance, detectives looked around the 40-acre big cat sanctuary that Don and Carol lived on. They also did aerial passes over the property and found nothing. Shortly thereafter, Carol allegedly broke into Ann McQueen's office trailer when no one else was around.
The will and the power of attorney, they were all taken out of the office that day.
Carol would later produce that very will, a will that had itself some very unusual language.
Isn't it suspicious that the power of attorney says, upon my disappearance? Is that normal verbiage?
I have, in 37 years, never seen it say, or disappearance. Everybody anticipates her death, but who in the world anticipates disappearance?
It was a will that was also quite favorable to Carol, who retained the property, the cats, and the lion's share of Don's wealth.
Case in point, it's quite sus.
Pardon the pun.
You inherited only 10% of his estate. Yes. And where did the rest go?
Carol.
So it's not hard to imagine how foul play might have been afoot, but again, we're not interested in the what or the why, it's all about the how. Could the tigers they kept on their land have had anything to do with Don's disappearance? Let's start off by seeing if that's even possible. Don Lewis weighed about 170 pounds at the time of his disappearance, and a tiger in captivity eats about 9 to 18 pounds of meat per day when it's fed 5 times a week.
Case in point, I'm just glad that he included both pounds, LBS, and kg. Thank you so much, so that his audience from all around the world that uses different metrics can understand what he's talking about. So, thank you so much, my pet. Let's continue.
Given that Carol reported Don missing after just 1 day, it means there's about a 24-hour window where the body had to have been completely eaten. In other words, it would take between 9 and 19 captive tigers to consume that much meat in such a short frame of time. Now, would Carol have had access to that many tigers? In 1997, Don Lewis claimed that they had 132 exotic cats on the premises, but Big Cat Rescue probably had nowhere near enough adult tigers to actually do the job. You see, in the 90s, the vast majority of cats that were kept at the Big Cat Rescue were much smaller cats, like bobcats and lynx.
We started in 1992 with the purchase of a bobcat who was going to be killed by taxidermists at an auction. The following year, we bought 56 bobcats and lynx from a fur farm. The next year, 28 bobcats and lynx. The following year, 22 more bobcats and lynx.
In the docuseries, former exotic animal owner Dennis Hill suggests that he sold Don and Carol their very first tiger in 1995, just 2 years before Don's disappearance.
I believe that I sold Don and Carol Lewis our very first tiger in 1995.
So even if Don and Carol bred their new tiger immediately, and Big Cat Rescue did breed its cats back in those days prior to Carol taking over, none of those tiger cubs would have been full size by the time that Don disappeared, considering it takes tigers about 5 years to reach its full size. It's also highly unlikely that Carol and Don would have gone out and bought a dozen more full-size tigers during that 2-year span. As the docuseries suggests, big cats are typically purchased as cubs and adolescents when audiences and families can interact with them, and thus the zoo can make money off of them. After that, the tigers just become big and expensive and not all that profitable.
And when they get to be that age, there are enough ignorant people out there who will then take in that that tiger, and a year later, that cat's 200 or 300 pounds.
Now at this point, you're probably saying to yourself, so what if Carol didn't have enough tigers to do the job? She definitely had plenty of other exotic cats around to devour a body. And that's very true. Carol undoubtedly had enough cats around to consume 170 pounds of meat in a single day. But the issue here isn't the meat, it's the bones.
Of course! You gotta keep the bones out of the cave.
Oh my god, is that Matt Pat?
The cave is where you keep your meat.
What we really...
Oh my god, Matt Pat as caveman. So, Cave Pat. Matt Cave. Sorry.
Need to know is whether Carol had the right types of animals available to her to get rid of all the evidence. Because remember, the authorities looked around the sanctuary and found nothing.
These tigers have such an acidic stomach that when you feed them a whole turkey, there's no bones that come out, okay? It's gone.
So the digestion of bone fragments might not be a huge hurdle, but breaking the bones into bite-sized pieces certainly is. A house cat, for example, doesn't have the bite strength to break, say, a human femur into manageable chunks. And
wow! Captain America!
Don't know the species demographics of the 132 exotic cats that Don claimed to own back in 1997, we do know that they had a lot of bobcats and a lot of lynx, and probably just one adult tiger. It means that if Carol fed her husband to the cats, which she adamantly denies to this day, she would have had to have killed her husband and then put her trust in a bunch of medium-sized cats who were domesticated from infancy by Don, no less, to not leave any bones behind. Even though that's exactly what medium-sized cats do when they consume large prey whose bones are too big for their medium-sized jaws to break. Bobcats have a bite force of approximately 110 pounds per square inch. Lynx have even less bite force than bobcats. Meanwhile, a human femur takes 1,700 psi to snap. So clearly it's gonna take a cat much bigger to get rid of every part of that human body. And there's no cat bigger than a tiger whose bite force is a whopping 1,050 psi. Wait, the tiger's bite force isn't enough to snap a human femur? I mean, it's not like I could do it or anything, but I guess I'm just surprised that even a tiger can't manage to do it. Well, it means that if Carol did feed her husband to the tigers and left no trace, she may have had to pre-break some of the bigger bones herself, and wouldn't you know it, there is a theory for that, Carol's meat grinder. There's quite a bit of talk about this in Tiger King, and people in Don's circle are miffed that Carol's meat grinder was never tested for Don's DNA. So did Carol have a meat grinder available to her in 1997? Yes. Was it the meat grinder shown in operation in Tiger King? No. One of Carol's numerous issues with Tiger King is that the producers showed a different and far larger meat grinder on screen than the one that she actually owned back at the time. Carol claims that she had herself a small Butcher Boy meat grinder. Quote, one of those little tabletop hand crank things, presumably similar to this.
We had a meat grinder. If you've ever seen a Butcher Boy meat grinder, it's about that big around.
Well, there are meat grinders out there capable of grinding down large bones from large mammals. Carol says she didn't own one of them, and nobody seems to be refuting that claim with any sort of evidence. So it looks like we'll have to assume the only things on the premises capable of grinding bones were the exotic cats themselves. And as we've established, the animals known to be on the property in 1997 aren't up to the task of making a 170-pound human body disappear. But what about all the animals that aren't known to us? After all, we are talking about a man, Don Lewis, who allegedly did a lot of things off the grid, like burying gold bars, keeping secret girlfriends on the side, buying planes in cash and then flying them around without recording those flights in any log because he didn't have a valid pilot's license. So it's not surprising that there's no record of the exact animals that Don Lewis had on the property. All we're able to piece together is that a lot of them were bobcats and lynx, and at least one of them was a tiger. But there were 132 exotic cats in all. What if there were other exotic cat breeds on the property?
Oh, that's true. What if there was one cat that exists on planet Earth that is capable of biting through the human femur?
Would any of those breeds possibly have been better suited for disposing human bones? Are there any big cats out there with a bite force of over 1,700 psi? Well,
a lion, a cheetah, no, a jaguar, a cougar.
Well, let's take a look and see. And a quick shout out to the FBI agent who's now been assigned to monitor my activity after all these super creepy Google searches that I've been doing. First up.
Alright, let's see. MedPet search. How much force does a human femur takes to break? Next, MedPet search. Can you grind human bones in a meat grinder? Why do you search that? Gosh. MedPet search. How to break into the tackle factory? Why? I mean, why? Gosh.
Let's look at lions. Seems like it should be the obvious first choice. The lion is the king of the jungle, right? Well, it turns out that the king of the jungle is generally smaller than a tiger and also has itself a smaller jaw. A lion's bite force is only about 650 psi. So while it can take care of some bones in the human body, it's not the one-stop human body disposal shop that we're after. Same thing goes with leopards, whose bite force is only 305 psi. And with those out of the way, we're actually running out of apex predators pretty quickly here, folks. I guess 1,700 psi is too much to ask. Unless, of course, a jaguar can deliver more bite force than a tiger. And why would they? Jaguars are smaller than tigers. They eat less than tigers. And their bite force is over 9,000?
Oh my gosh, I love the Dragon Ball reference!
Well, no, it's not over 9,000, I just wanted to say that. But the Jaguar's bite force is the biggest of the bunch. It's actually at 2,000 psi.
So even though it's not 9,000, it's 2,000, so okay, let me just do the reference. It's over 9,000! I'm sorry.
Turns out that they have remarkably strong bites. And guess what? They bite with enough force to break through the human feet. So there you have it, folks. The Hillsborough County Sheriff recently announced that he's seeking leads on the case again. Anybody got any details of whether there were jaguars on the property at the time? Because if there was a jaguar cage on Carol's property back in 1997, it seems like the place to investigate. Joe Exotic may be the Tiger King, but Carol Baskin may have been the undercover jaguar queen the entire time. Or, you know what? She might have just killed her husband and hid his body somewhere in the 40 acres of land that they have. Something tells me the cops didn't do that thorough of a job covering that huge amount of territory. But hey, that's just a theory. A film theory. And cut. But don't cut up a human body and feed it to wild animals. That would be a big no-no.
No. Please don't. Human lives are important. I'm sorry, I'm speaking from a biased point of view because I'm also human, but human lives are important. Thank you so much. Anyways, thank you so much for watching this video with me. I hope you find this video very interesting to watch. Quite unique and special in the next. If you do like this video, please remember to like, share and subscribe to my channel and comment down below if you have anything to share with us. Don't forget to follow my channel and sincerely appreciate all of our support and encouragement for work. Thank you all so much, you're the best. I hope to see you all in my next video. But hey, that's just a theory, a film theory, and cut. Thank you. And I hope to see you all in my next video. Bye bye. Thank you so much. Please remember to subscribe.